So good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Tuesday to join us.
Sure.
We're here to talk about AI and compliance and what it means for your practice or your business. And we've got a couple different avenues to go down, but just by way of introductions, first off, I'm Ryan Boudreau. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success here at Abide. If you're a customer of ours, first off, thank you. You've probably worked with my team, whether you're doing that through the chat in the platform, calling us, but we're the ones in the trenches helping customers through these compliance scenarios. And then to my left here, Jake, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jake Dewberry. I'm the COO and in-house counselor here at Abide. And day-to-day operations really is kind of the main thing I focus on, as well as if you ever go through an investigation or audit, which I hope you don't, but we assist with that too, and very involved in that too when you go through that process.
Yeah, both of us coming together big time on those.
Bring everybody.
Yeah. All hands on deck. If you're not familiar with Abide, if you just kind of saw the HIPAA compliance AI topic and said, hey, that sounds interesting, I'll join that. A little bit about us. So if it's your first time interacting with us, thank you for joining us. Welcome. We appreciate it. Love to give you more information following this as well if you're interested in what we had to say. But we're at the core a technology company. We're based here in Tampa, comprised of HIPAA and OSHA experts and expertise. We provide a software solution that is designed to help provide intelligence, automation to making HIPAA and OSHA compliance simpler in the healthcare space. And then also bringing things like our teams together to help kind of add fuel to that fire, help you scale your organization and maintain compliance, but spend less time doing it. So that's who we are. I think we provide the best solution in the industry, maybe some bias there, but we also love to do things like this and provide education and share our experiences, our expertise, and help you guys in kind of navigating some difficult things. I don't think anybody got into healthcare necessarily that's on the call to learn about compliance. It's just part of the job. We try to make that a lot easier for you guys and give you what you need to know. So that's us, and we'll go ahead and dive into quick agenda here. So we're going to go through things, starting with the current AI landscape, just kind of setting the stage there a little bit. Talk a little bit more about the basics of HIPAA compliance, where we've gotten to this point, and then we'll start to connect things a bit more to AI and what that means from HIPAA. A lot of this is kind of, I don't want to say speculative. There are some things that we'll talk about in terms of, what we're anticipating, what we've seen, what the precedent is, and then we'll share what are the kind of the definitive things based on the framework that exists today. We'll kind of talk through some situations, challenges that you might encounter, how to handle those, what questions to ask, and then we'll share some resources if you want to touch base with us. And then lastly, Q&A. Hopefully we have some time there to answer any questions that you guys have if we don't answer those along the way. But I do invite you to ask those questions in the chat as we go. So don't feel like you got to wait to the end to bring those up.
Fire away. Yeah,
fire away. Add them in there. We've got our team in the room here with us to help kind of compile all those together, and then we'll get to whatever we can at the end. So so let's start off with the current landscape. Where is AI, at least in the healthcare space? Obviously things have been moving super quick, and I think we all can appreciate that it's here to stay, right? Like it's already being adopted in seemingly everywhere. I feel like there's nothing that I interact with at this point, even in my personal life, that doesn't have some kind of AI incorporation. And we wanted to reference a survey to American Medical Association did earlier this year. And I mean, the net of it is the majority of physicians see benefits of using AI, and the majority of physicians are using AI in some form or fashion already. And that's only going to go up.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. See some of the bullet points right there. And the last one that's really kind of very interesting to me is that predictions based on how the trend's going that 80 to 90% of providers will be using AI by the end of 2026. So if you're not using it, you probably will be soon. And there are some good things that kind of come out of it too. People, I think, people are seeing benefits as well as some negative stuff here and there, but mainly benefits. I think that's the biggest thing with it.
Yeah, I think there's just like anything, right? There's with major change, there's considerations that, the whole reason HIPAA even came about back in the 90s was to solve an issue and anticipate the future. AI is challenging that next evolution of where we go. It's obviously providing a lot of value in a lot of places. People are using it. It's just, how do we do it responsibly?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that patients' information is protected? How do we make sure that we're not creating more problems for ourselves than we're solving? But yeah, I mean, we're using it on a regular basis in our own internal operations. We're also trying to find ways to incorporate it into our platform to make our customers' lives more effective. But I think that's really the value prop is, again, you didn't get into healthcare to learn about compliance or to do a lot of those kind of tedious things. You wanted to deal with patients if you're a provider, right? You wanted to work with patients. AI is able to help take off some of those things so that you can get back to the things that you really enjoy.
Yeah, it's very true. And kind of interesting too, this slide that we're looking at right here is from the American Dental Association, and it's pretty neat. What they did is they took 20 patient questions and they had providers answer them, and then they had AI answer them too. And then they had another set of providers review those answers, and the majority of the answers that the providers picked were AI generated. And so that kind of shows you right there that, sometimes it can write things better. Sometimes it can word things, different, that maybe are sometimes I'd say, not really dumbed down, but in a sense, patients can read better or where the case may be. And also too, it kind of just shows that there's some efficiency there and there's some truth behind it. And what's interesting too, is that model of ChatGPT that they used in this survey that they did, or this experiment really was, I think it was level 2, and now we're on like model 5. And so it just kind of shows like just the, if they were thinking it was good at level 2 and now we're on 5, it's just kind of getting better and better. But it just kind of shows that, it is here to stay in a sense, and very efficient and could be used for good.
Yeah, if used in the right places, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the compliance basics and reset a couple pieces here. What's important when it comes to compliance, right? I like to talk about, and we talk to customers about this as we're kind of bringing them on board. Our sales team goes through some of the same kind of education, but compliance is a lot more multifaceted than I think sometimes people give credit. We think of it as this puzzle. So that's what you're seeing on the screen here is this puzzle. All of these pieces are equally important, and they're all necessary in order to have a full comprehensive picture to compliance. So just the same way is when we're thinking about AI and bringing that in, we need to make sure that it addresses all those components too. So it's not as simple as like, oh, let's just, do training around AI. That's not going to give you enough, right? So, and if you joined us in one of our last webinars, I think it was in June. If you go to our website and the resources, you can access this if you're curious. But I talked about what the proposed rule changes are that are coming. These were proposed back at the end of last year. They're in all likelihood going to begin enforcing the outcomes from these at some point next year. So we're in a really good spot where we can really get ahead of these things and anticipate. And there were a couple of key things as a part of that is addressable security safeguards becoming required. So basically OCR in their investigations are seeing that too few people are actually doing the things that they would like for them to do. So instead of making it ambiguous, it's a requirement, right? So that's number one. Covered entities must verify these safeguards with business associates, which I think that's the really interesting one as it relates to AI, because I mean, the reality for most of you on the line probably is your use of AI is currently or will be as a part of an existing tool that you have in your practice, right? So that means that the same principles will apply to that technology as it would any other BA relationship. So they're taking the BA relationship a lot more seriously. And you see that in the third bullet point here is notifying within 24 hours of a contingency plan activation. So just getting ahead of boom, if you will, a little bit more. And then, like I mentioned, the enforcement kind of coming later this year. But I think with this change and going back to 2013 and changes since 2013, really, a lot of them have been really focused on the VA. And I think that's because they're responsible for so much more than they were initially. And that's why they're putting a lot more in place. There's a lot more risk.
I think hackers kind of know that too.
Yeah,
now,
yeah. Would I go after one practice, or could I go after a VA that could potentially
thousands of practices?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then in terms of what we're seeing so far this year as well, compared to previous years, is how much bigger the financial impacts are of the fines. I mean, there's obviously the impact of the breach or whatever that may occur, but also the fines after that.
Yeah, and it's costly, as you can see. There's some big numbers that you can see as it's kind of grown over the years, and you kind of see. I mean, we're up to date right now, 158 million. So that's a pretty big number, and we definitely don't see that kind of going away. Like everything kind of, and the government starts generating money from it, they usually keep it around, like taxes. But yeah, so we'll kind of look at a little bit of the next slide and kind of see a little bit deeper kind of what's kind of going on. And this is interesting. You see a comparison of the fine count from last year to this year, and really kind of see how it's already kind of starting off with a boom. And yes, we're a little bit past half the year, more towards the end, but you can see we're going to beat the number most likely that we had last year. And even some interesting facts that Ryan kind of highlighted right here is that we had 7 BA fines this year, and last year we had 0. And so that's very interesting, and kind of shows you what the government's kind of looking at, just like Ryan was saying previously, that they know that, hey, hackers, if they go after this one area, they can get access to 10 times the amount versus one other area. And so that's why they're making this a big focus and really kind of, enforcing it. As you can see that there's already been 7 this year. It's very interesting, just something kind of to highlight right there.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also interesting. I was, as one does, obviously, looking at the use cases of AI that HHS has publicized. And this is just a document that HHS has put out there that, transparency in terms of how they're exploring using AI across the entire department. And what I thought was interesting in reading that was pretty much all of these use cases are geared towards eliminating administrative burdens, things that are very repetitive, kind of data analysis, if you will, so they can make decisions faster and comb through data faster. And we're seeing already, you can see from these stats, that the fine frequency is increasing for BAs and everybody. I imagine that can only go up because
with efficiencies.
With efficiencies. OCR already cares about it. When they do these investigations, it's also frustrating for them because they're seeing that things aren't being done properly. So it's like, okay, we need to get out there more and investigate more. And then if they can reduce some of that administrative burden and use things like AI, we may see the frequency, the volume of their investigations or their proactive audits even increase, multiple times, not double, triple, maybe several times.
And these investigations, they're cumbersome. I mean, you've seen in our webinars, we kind of talk about them a little bit here and there. But yeah, the ones that we've participated in, over 200 and 100% pass rate, throw that out there a little bit too. But the process is very cumbersome. They'll usually submit a questionnaire that they're requesting anywhere between, I would say, 30 to 40 different documents or more. And there's just questions outlining all these different policies they want to see, how you did training. So you submit a ton of information to them, and like Ryan was saying, using AI to parse that information and data and get what they need to make sure you're doing this here and there could speed up those processes, but also make it more stringent in a sense where they know what they're looking for, they know what they want. So having the right policies, procedures, training stuff in place, I think that's very, very crucial and very important going forward, especially with the increase of AI usage everywhere. And like Ryan was saying too, the government did do a huge initiative. I'm sure everyone's aware of it, with the whole Doge initiative that they started, at the beginning of the year. They were using AI in a lot of those initiatives to check things and monitor stuff. So it's definitely trickling into the OCR and HHS.
Mm-hmm. So what does HIPAA say about AI, right? That's the big question. Short answer is there's not any explicit mention of AI in the current legislation, at least within the HIPAA space.
Yeah.
Right.
Like all kind of law and tech, there's a lag with the law, and I mean, we were talking about it the other day, and as you know, starting with even just the HIPAA in general,
Mhm.
just the creation of HIPAA, they didn't start implementing fines to years after, and so it's one of those things that it's very interesting, and I do think it is speeding up. Though I will say that, you know, the law side is speeding up to catch the tech now, and we're kind of in that weird area with that kind of limbo where it's like we're waiting, kind of seeing what's going on from a federal standpoint. But yeah, like Ryan was saying, not much has changed in a sense, but there's a caveat to that.
Yeah, it's not really fully the wild
Yeah.
west. So that's not to say that you shouldn't be pursuing AI because there's no legislation explicitly geared towards it. So like the real answer here is, while there's no explicit guidance, it's kind of implicitly covers
Yeah.
everything, right? Tell us kind of more about that.
It's kind of, they're defaulting back to the, you know, what's already in place. So you would apply what's in place to your current operations, current, you know, day-to-day stuff, or any kind of involving HIPAA. What you're doing now that Abide's telling you to do is what they're considering to be doing with the AI, with AI in general. But we do foresee that changing down the road. They're probably going to change some definitions, maybe add a couple of things here and there, vetting, which we'll kind of get into in a little bit when it comes to those BAs. But really, nothing's changed legally in a sense, but you should apply the current law that's in place to everything you're doing in your operations involving HIPAA and the use of AI in that.
So in a lot of ways, you treat it just like any other technology or business relationship. Yeah, I think it has to change at some point and provide more guidance, just because these AI use cases have the potential to be much more complex.
And they're evolving too. So
Yeah.
it's kind of changing day to day.
Well, and I think what we find too is that it starts to spill. Well, I mean, it already does exist outside of, but even in this conversation compared to some others that we have, I feel like AI ends up touches a lot of different things beyond, you know, HIPAA and maybe what the OCR is focused on, or even HHS, but it kind of goes beyond that even. And I think we kind of see that a little bit on the state side. So tell us a little bit about what the states are doing that's different, and are they looking at it from a HIPAA standpoint, or do they kind of cast a wider net?
Yeah, a wider net, and you probably are aware of this if you're using any AI in your EHR system, or if you're in certain states here and there. But this map kind of shows you currently right now where we stand with states that have passed AI laws involving healthcare. And so, like, you know, earlier we were talking about what's changed from a HIPAA federal level, and that nothing has changed there technically yet, but they still say, you know, it's the default. You apply what's already in the current federal law to your day-to-day operations. But here, there's actually individual new state laws, which will kind of highlight those. But this map's a good visual of kind of what states have already started implementing AI laws in healthcare, and that can vary from a variety of different things, which we'll show you. But then also too, you can see the states that haven't done anything yet. So it's kind of an interesting area that, you know, we're at an interesting time when it comes to AI. We're all living through this weird experience in life right now where everything's changing. And as you can see in this map right here, some states are catching up and some are already implementing laws that are in place right now.
Let's talk about a couple of those examples. Which ones do you think are worth highlighting?
Yeah, so we kind of put some up here to kind of look at and see kind of right here. But the first one kind of is Arizona, and they passed a law that insurers cannot deny claims or pre-auths based on AI. And a lot of I think we were looking into this and everything. There were some big names that got in trouble with this. United Healthcare was kind of one of the big ones.
Yeah, they were kind of notorious for it came out that they were using AI to deny claims.
And I see the efficiencies, but there is some kind of human aspect that needs to be checked with that. So they kind of passed that law right there that kind of, you know, it's not allowed in Arizona, but also too, you can see Texas right there just passed a law pretty recent. And pretty much what that says, any AI usage in EHRs, healthcare in general, it has to be reviewed by a provider. Which may seem like common sense to most people, but that kind of is a bigger net. Maybe it's not just the provider looking at the patient, checking, going through diagnosis, coming up with a plan and everything like that. Maybe it's from just, check-in process or a portal process. So anything that our chatbot, anything like that, anything that is being applied with AI must be reviewed. And when it comes to a patient aspect, that has to be reviewed by a provider. The other thing is Nevada, which they actually, passed a recent law right there too. And this is an interesting, if you're in the mental health space, you can't use AI to help with treatment plans currently there. And you can kind of read through that a little bit, and you can probably understand the sensitivity with that. And so that's kind of a big point in that area. But the next two right there that we have listed are Utah and California. And in Utah, if you are using AI and you're seeing a patient as a provider, you must tell the patient verbally at the start of the visit or any interactions you have with them. If it's, if you're using it electronically, you must post a disclaimer, just like it says in the other law in California right there too. But if you're doing it verbally, if you're going to use a scribe or you're going to have an AI bot on your phone that's going to document your note for you, you have to verbally tell them if you're doing that. And you probably are. Probably your EHR system's already kind of telling you this, or it's probably adding a disclaimer. I've seen it in a couple EHRs already adding disclaimers if you're using any type of AI. But it is something that's here to change. And as you can see right here, these states are navigating those changes, trying to come up with solutions legally to that and kind of hold people accountable, but also to kind of let the patients know kind of what's going on.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of concern around transparency, and that should be maybe one of the bigger concerns when it comes to AI. And not that yes necessarily you're being transparent with your use cases to your patients. I think that is nice. I think your patients will appreciate that. But in how the AI models come to their conclusions, and for those that don't know my background, I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I spent a good part of my career in the cybersecurity space, and I've worked for companies where we were building ourselves, like not using Chat GPT, but building our own AI models and agentic AI models, which are simply models that make decisions and they kind of work collectively, kind of like your staff, right? You have a conversation, everybody has a perspective, and then you use that to make a decision. There are models that are being introduced that do those types of things, but what's really important in those is to have the transparency to how the model made its decision. It's just like in grade school, you had to show your work. You got the right answer in the math problem, great, but if you can't prove that you got it the right way, you didn't get points, or maybe you got partial points. And that's kind of the same thing is like, and I think where they're seeing a lot of concern is with the bias potential of these models, and having the transparency to, okay, they made this decision for this reason. Okay, is that the right decision to have made? So I think
that kind of goes with the whole insurance aspect of that. United Healthcare getting in trouble with that, but also too why Arizona kind of made that law, because there was bias in some of those algorithms with the AI was using to deny claims, and it kind of was using its judgment to say, hey, this person, based on their demographic information here, they're probably going to have a problem down the road, so we should deny this coverage or deny this here, instead of, maybe they get better, maybe they, overcome this, or whatever the case may be. And that's where that bias kind of came in, because it is programmed. So it's a yes, no kind of thing instead of a maybe. So it's interesting, very interesting.
Well, and that's why it's important to know how these models are trained. What data are they used to be trained? These are complicated questions to be asking vendors, or to, if you're buying a product from somebody, but they're kind of important to know. And if you can be asking these questions, I think it's a good thing to ask, especially in the healthcare space, because there's a lot more at stake, I think. So let's move forward and kind of talk a little bit about some potential challenges. We put together some questions or kind of discussion scenarios, if you will. I think, based on what we hear a lot, what customers ask us, and what we think is important to know and understand. So the first one is kind of straightforward, but how do you ensure that your AI tool or any tool that you use is HIPAA compliant? And I think the question is kind of two parts, and hopefully you don't see the first part and think, okay, I've done that, I'm good. You know, because I feel like I have to say this, you know, at minimum, you know, we talked about business associates, business associate agreements. I'm assuming that the AI tools that you're using, you didn't develop yourself, so you're consuming from a vendor. Therefore, you should have a business associate agreement in place. If there's any kind of PHI involved or potentially involved in that kind of you know, transaction, so to speak. That's the minimum, but I think, you know, that's kind of focusing only on the compliance piece. Like, oh, okay, I checked the box, I'm compliant. But when you think about, you know, the protecting your patients, like that's kind of what matters to me when I'm thinking about how we impact our customers. Is not just we help protect their businesses, but we help protect their patients too. And that's why I say that the best practice is to have your vendors prove that, you know, they signed the business associate agreement. They're basically assuming that responsibility or liability, that, hey, we're doing the things that HIPAA says that we should be doing. But I mean, anybody can say they're doing the things, and it won't really come into play until, you know, something goes wrong, right? So yeah, you may be covered in the sense that you've got a business associate agreement, but your patients are still impacted. And if you just ask simple questions up front, I think you can avoid a lot of that risk. In the simplest way, I think, if you don't go too far into the weeds in terms of what questions to ask them for a SOC 2 report. That's kind of, you know, kind of a lower level in the grand scheme compared to high trust. I would say I would prioritize high trust. If you can get a high trust certificate from the vendor, that would be, you know, not the, hey, we're good, we don't need to ask any other questions, but that you'd be in a really good spot, I think.
Yeah.
If you can get either of those two, though, I would be happy. I'd say, hey, good job, thanks for asking those questions.
I think there is some responsibility on the provider of the office to really kind of vet your vendors in a sense, and that kind of, like Ryan was saying, is more than just getting them to sign an agreement. Make sure a little bit that they're actually doing what they're saying, because yeah, that could kind of backfire if they're not here and there, and it's more than just, you know, an agreement might block you from getting a fine, but you have to let your patients know. Your patients would be aware that, hey, there was a breach with this BA. Yes, they signed a BA agreement, so hey, your office isn't getting fined. You're safe there in that aspect. But you also, you know, your patients are going to be aware that you went with this vendor that had a breach, and their information is now out there. And so that's something kind of just to think of, just another layer, like, you know, maybe I should go with this person here. They were very transparent about this versus this one. They didn't give me anything or didn't do anything. So yeah, Ryan's got a good point there, you know, getting the bare minimum, but also too, some things you can ask them for to check and make sure.
And we're seeing that in terms of the proposed rule updates anyway, is that
Requiring
is
it.
likely going to be something that you'll have to ask a certain kind of, think of it almost like a mini SRA or something like that of questions that you should be asking your vendors. And if you're asking them for these kind of prove it documents, I think that'll put you in a really good path forward.
And it kind of, another thing too to kind of highlight on that is that they're probably going to do some type of certification too with vendors. There is certifications now for EHRs, and I'm sure everyone's aware of it on this webinar. But even the EHRs are kind of changing their certifications. We saw with a law that they just passed recently that is now requiring the EHR systems to be transparent based on their algorithms, based on their bias, based on how they're developing the chat bots, or the AI bot that is driving the AI and the EHR. They're now requiring them to be more transparent in that aspect. And so we'll probably see that kind of carry over into other different areas, just not technically the EHR, that's what it's doing now, but it will spill over in probably different other vendors and BAs in the future. We'll see that.
Yeah, so a lot there. We'll move forward and talk about documentation, right? So if you're using these models or these tools, how do you go about the documentation to make sure that you're doing it compliantly? Is there anything unique here, Jake, or?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to documentation, you want to make sure that you have, or just anything in general, really, you want to make sure that your staff is trained. I think that's kind of one of the biggest things. Then also too, your policies and procedures, they have to be evolving too with your tech, with your stuff kind of going on in the office, new changes getting implemented, new vendors. You want to make sure all those are up to date. And then lastly, as your SRA, which is, I know I said lastly here, but it's probably one of the biggest important ones out of everything. It drives everything. And that's the first thing they ask for when it goes to an investigation or an audit. They always ask, hey, can we see the SRA? And so it's one of those things, like, you don't even have questions in there or answers in there or anything in that SRA showing that's not a good sign. So I would definitely highlight those three right there and kind of apply those. Make sure.
Yeah, which I think is really, that's what you should be doing anyway, outside of the conversation of AI. So it's kind of, again, extending those same principles, but adding the specific, language or elements of AI into that training process or those policies and the specific questions in your SRA. So, great thing for our customers is you're already doing this through the platform, and we're making those updates. So, as we continue to learn more about what will be the required aspects of AI and those evolutions, policy changes and stuff like that, that's all taken care of for you. Otherwise, you have to kind of stay on top of this stuff and understand how to incorporate it into your practice a little bit more. So what about when using AI? I think this one's really interesting. Patient consent. Let's first talk about, I think this is probably the most common use case that probably most people on the phone would be subscribers of, but it's using some kind of AI tool for consultation, dictation, or something like that, where you're recording a conversation with a patient, and maybe that it's using it to take notes and prescribe kind of follow-up actions maybe. So how do you go about this kind of tricky situation? And does the state, we kind of call that a little bit, but
yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting, just kind of thinking back to that state map, how states are adding laws here and there. Same thing applies here. It's kind of a weird area when it comes to AI, because you're technically recording them, and so you, in some states like Florida, in other states, you need a two-party consent. And so it's one of those things that's very interesting, because you just think, oh, it's just AI in my EHR, I'm not recording this like a phone call or something, but technically it falls into that category. And so that's something kind of interesting, and I'm sure hopefully your EHRs are kind of providing some of this documentation and questions and areas to show that you got consent. But if not, you should definitely be putting this in some of your intake forms. I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to consent and, scribing or dictating, anything like that. You definitely need some clause in there, or you need something in there that they're agreeing to, because you are recording them. You are kind of putting that in there, and it's staying somewhere out there. And so you definitely have to treat it like that. And that's what kind of Ryan was alluding to earlier. We're at this intersection of AI that's kind of attached to multiple areas. Yes, it's healthcare, but there's also these other areas it's attached to that you kind of have to do both. You have one foot in healthcare, then one foot over here in the FTC technically. And so that's where you're kind of juggling both and making sure you're being compliant in this kind of area.
Yeah, HIPAA doesn't talk anything at all about recording your patients necessarily. That's outside of the HIPAA scope, but that's where, we've kind of talked about this a lot, just kind of back and forth in terms of like AI is challenging the boundaries of a lot of different areas, where things that we're trying to keep the conversation more aligned to HIPAA, because that's more of our expertise. But especially when you're talking about AI, you're going to deal with other laws that you're maybe weren't familiar. Maybe you didn't know that you had to think about FTC in healthcare, and now all of a sudden it's in your lap.
Yeah, it is very interesting, a very interesting time.
So yeah, and I like to think of the whole transcribing piece as in some ways similar to like the text kind of dynamic, right? Like it doesn't have to be anything over the top, but you should be asking your patients for their kind of approval for receiving text messages of appointment reminders and things like that. This would probably be something similar to that, is, hey, we use this, And I would tell them, if you're a practice, like, hey, we use this so that we can spend more time with you and talking to you. So it's like, make it a value prop for them as well, that, you know, hey, this helps us be more present, you know, which I think it does as well.
Yeah, and so we're kind of brainstorming and looking at different ideas and concepts with this, and stumbled upon a video of actually a provider talking about the benefits of AI, because there are. And she was saying in this video that we were watching that she, in the past, when she's dictating or, you know, talking to a patient, getting the diagnosis, going through the whole plan with them, she's usually looking at her computer and glancing at them, going back to her computer, glancing, and she said what she has, you know, kind of been benefited by, and also too just happy about, is now with dictation and transcribing, she can open up the AI app on her phone, set it down in the patient's room, and look at the patient and just talk to the patient and get that one-on-one experience back that was kind of taken away with EHRs kind of in the past. And so that's kind of interesting. We're doing a cycle back where now, you know, you went to med school for a reason, for patient care, not to be tech guys, and so that's kind of, we're at this spot now. We're getting providers back to really getting that one-on-one experience with patients, which I think is a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, we use it all the time too. We have AI recorders join our meetings, and yeah, it does make it a lot easier. Like, I can be present in the conversation. I still take little notes here or there, but you know, then I can kind of validate what I'm hearing, you know, after the fact. So yeah, so I mean, like, kind of to add the second layer to this, because if we're talking about something that is actually communicating with the patient, whether it be a chatbot or something like that, if it's listening or recording or something like that, you know, patient consent is going to be important, and in some states necessary, and best practice would probably be to assume that it's necessary, even if you're not in Florida. But the other part is if it's just simply analyzing data kind of in the background, still a part of kind of the TPO model, if you will, treatment, payment, and operations. It's still relevant in that context, and you know, your MPP should cover most of those use cases, and I think it's relatively well integrated at that point. Again, assuming that you also have that VA.
True.
Yeah.
Step one.
Yeah. Step one. Now, we get a lot of questions about the kind of public models as well. Like, okay, well, maybe I don't have any kind of, you know, sexy AI built into my tools or whatever. What about just the free chat bots? Can I use those? And you know, I think it's very slippery slope. Like, you know, can you do it in a compliant fashion? Probably, but oh man, the line is so razor thin, and it's relying entirely on the lack of human error, which I think we can all appreciate that you can't ever truly eliminate. You know, and I'm talking about like Chat GPT or Gemini, or I forget the third one. I used to really like it because it was really interesting. But you know, you guys know whichever one it is you use, or maybe your staff uses it, and maybe you don't know that your staff is using it because they're doing it, you know, kind of under the public eye, so to speak. But the risk there is that with these open models, you don't have any kind of relationship, so there's no business associate agreement in place. And by the way, none of them will sign one if you ask them to. They might if you pay for a subscription level service from these guys. And once you put anything into those public models, whatever you put in, that's no longer yours, or not yours alone anyway. That is public information. They will absolutely use it to train their models. So if there's any potential risk, which there is, that PHI is mistakenly put into that, that's a breach. That's a breach. Yeah, that's a problem. And we've had some folks tell us, but you know, hey, we anonymize the data, or we remove any PHI, which
it's again, very complex.
Yeah, it's tough to do that, especially in large data sets. I mean, I try to scrub Excel sheets for things as we're trying to, you know, build formulas and whatever, and it's really difficult to get that perfect. The stakes are a little bit lower within one Excel sheet, but you know, this is the risk. So you know, we remove PHI. I sure hope so, but it's going to be so hard to ensure that happens every time.
Yeah.
So our recommendations, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, definitely limit access and block it. If you pay for the premium, versions of these softwares out there, definitely get with your IT guy first, just to make sure. I would say get with your IT person, and then go through and get them to evaluate and make sure that how the data is being stored, because that in itself is a complex area. Because even if you are paying for the premium services here and there, they say, hey, oh, we're not storing it or we are storing it for 30 days. It's only accessed by our chat bot, not people. And there's all these different nuances that kind of go into it, where you have to do your research and really do your homework and dive into it. And if they're not going to sign a BA, where does that kind of put you here and there? And so it's one of those things that are very complex. So definitely make sure that you get with your IT person just to verify. If it's in your EHR, that's kind of a different story. I mean, they should be vetted and be secure and everything like that. And you could check with your EHR company just to make sure. But overall, definitely check, because it is very complex. It's similar to compliance. It's very complex, where they do all these different things behind the scenes, where they put things here and there and use it for this case here, but not for this case. And you really got to do your research and kind of make sure. So first off, definitely verify with them, and then block access if you aren't using it. You might see your staff maybe pulling it up on their phone or something like that. So you just want to kind of make it aware and inform everyone in your office, like, hey, we need to stick with this one right here. It's secure, instead of asking questions to other ones. And you get into a whole bunch of different things with hallucinations and everything. So you just want to be sure that you're doing the right thing, and be HIPAA compliant. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah. I mean, safest thing is to block it. And this was something that I saw on the corporate side, in my cybersecurity days. They took no risks at all. It was like, hey, there's no way for us to ensure that it's used properly. So we're going to remove the variable entirely. We're going to block it. We're going to try to figure out a way that because we see value to using it. We just need to make sure that we're doing it in a safe way.
Yeah, and even from the legal standpoint, I've seen in the bar journal come out where they've kind of fined attorneys, or attorneys are on probation and are suspended due to them using AI in some of their cases, and it's giving them fake cases, giving them fake references and stuff like that, and then it's gone to court, where and then this attorney is quoting a fake case that was never even created or ever real, and then it's cost them their license. So you don't want to be in that kind of category in a medical professional standpoint. You don't want that to happen to you. You also don't want to be the first, I'd say, fine that's enforced by the OCR dealing with AI. We know it's coming soon. They always try to make an example of different things, and so it's definitely going to happen eventually, where there will be a provider that's using AI and putting in a PHI into the chat bot, and then the OCR is going to find out, and then they're going to find them and dig into it. So it's one of those things that you don't want that to happen to you. So do those recommendations. It'll help you in the long run.
And I wanted to show an example of what those hallucinations might look like. I imagine a lot of people have always used Google. Hopefully you can see this big enough, but now Google has integrated Gemini into its search engine. So when you ask it questions, it'll give you kind of an AI result. And this is just an example of kind of a compliance question that's not an uncommon one that folks ask us. And the difference between and this was just something that I was playing around with, but how I did this search, the only difference is the apostrophe. And if you can see the answer here that it provided, it's potentially a completely different, misleading answer in terms of how you should or shouldn't be providing access to a patient's record to their father. Right. Yeah. And one of these could get you in a lot of trouble in terms of access denial. And we've seen fines related to that. Yeah. So you got to be really careful. If you don't know the answers to questions and you don't know what to look for, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use AI to ask questions, but you need to really have a pretty solid understanding of what you're looking for. Otherwise, it can be very misleading and very dangerous in that regard too. So it's really good for data analysis. asking it, kind of questions it still seems to have some struggles with. And then to kind of wrap things up here in terms of the scenarios that we wanted to cover, is talking about risk. Like, okay, I kind of have these questions in my head of what I should be asking, but what are the risks that I might be bringing? Because I think that's a worthwhile consideration too. Is like, you're assuming a certain amount of responsibility by bringing in AI in certain applications. One of the important things to consider is that, you can kind of think of AI as like an extension of your staff, in the sense that, and this was the same side, the same thing was true in the cybersecurity world, is if an AI agent is making a decision about something, that is the same responsibility as a human. So you need to kind of treat it the same way. And that means that the way that your staff can get in trouble, your AI can also get in trouble. So there's risk there. Also, I think it's worth calling out that we talked about BAAs a lot, but that doesn't eliminate your clinical or ethical responsibility. That if, kind of as we were talking about, if a model makes a decision based on something and that doesn't comply with ethical standards, it's not the AI's fault in that sense. You are likely to be held responsible as well, or instead of, potentially, because you should be kind of checking the work, right? And some states are going to require that, and probably most at some point will.
Yeah, we think that'll be like the bare minimum in the future, where anytime you use AI, there has to be, a check off on that note that's saying, hey, it was reviewed by provider so and so. And that's kind of something that we see as will probably be the default, because it is, at the end of the day, like, your license on the line, and you don't want to, just trust AI. And it's one of those things that you worked hard for it, so you want to make sure that you keep it. That's kind of the big thing right there.
Yeah, and I think a good example to think of is like anytime you've used voice to text or any of those things that kind of transcribe, essentially, how often do you find that the words aren't what was said? Maybe slight differences, like, if you're kind of trying to come up with some kind of medication plan for a patient, some of those words are more complex words, and they're not necessarily words that are common in the English language. What are the odds that it mixes those things up? And if you're not verifying and somebody is referencing that transcript to fulfill a prescription, or maybe you've forgotten yourself when you go back to look at your notes, that could be potentially problematic and potentially worst case fatal to a patient. So,
and not using a medical AI chatbot too. I think that's one of the big things too, because they're not trained to pick up on some of those medications.
Right. Right. Yeah. So there's responsibility there. And kind of the last piece here is that the AI outputs, especially when we're talking about like the transcribing, they become part of your medical record.
They've actually evolved the definition of what a record set is, and that's your medical record in general. And so that was very interesting, seeing some of those changes as AI has kind of progressed. But they actually changed the definition, and now they've included AI. And they don't say AI, they say anything that was used to help the provider make a medical decision, which AI falls under that category, that can be subpoenaed. And if you go, hopefully never ever, fingers crossed, hopefully you don't have an disgruntled patient that's now pursuing legal action against you, and then their medical record is subpoenaed and all that information's pulled up. They also too would look at the chatbot now, the AI chatbot, and see kind of what you put in there, and see what suggestions it gave you and what you selected based on your information, or what you asked it. Because some of them have questions you can ask. So all that information that you're putting into the chatbot now will be used in court against you. So there's something to keep in mind. I think these are some things, and I think when it comes to that level, I would definitely relay that to your staff. You want your staff to understand that too, because it might not be you that's doing it. It might be your staff that put something in the chatbot or asked the chatbot a certain question that could backfire, on you. And so it's one of those things, just kind of understand the bigger picture, that from a legal standpoint, and don't want to do a scare tactic. There are huge benefits with AI, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think training and policies and procedures, those can help address a lot of these risks. But yeah, that's all the content that we wanted to go through. Did want to share a couple Abide resources here for you guys. We're continuing to monitor everything, so we're expecting at some point HHS is going to provide more guidance.
It's coming.
Yeah, for sure, it's coming. So we continue to monitor that. So, keep an eye out for our webinars as new information becomes available. Our customers automatically receive those updates in the platform, but we'll do more communication around those as well. And yeah, I mean, it's just like HIPAA compliance has been for the last 20 years. It's a bit of a moving target. It's always evolving, so you need to do your due diligence, consume as much as you can, understand as much as you can, and figure out how to apply that to your practice, and then engage with people that are spending their time in as well. And that's kind of where we fit in a lot of our customer conversations, is helping provide guidance on a lot of their questions.
Give us a call.
Yeah. And if you're looking for something to streamline your compliance, shameless plug here, but our platform is a great way to do that. We are designed to help simplify compliance, help you focus on patient care, provide you the expert support through ourselves and our teams, and provide that kind of centralized hub experience to contain it all. I'll leave this up here for a second if anybody wants to scan any of these resources, but we've got a HIPAA checklist that you can go through, HIPAA challenge if you kind of want to benchmark where you're at right now, an ebook if you're a reader, and if you want to schedule a consult with anybody from our sales team, there's the map there based on where you guys are based out of. You can schedule that as well. So we'll kind of wrap things up with Q&A. If we have any questions, we've got our team in here, so they've been monitoring the chat and kind of consolidating those. So give us a moment while they share that with us. And if you haven't asked questions yet and you want to, feel free to throw those in there now too. I think the guys in here with us helped to answer some of those questions as well.
All right, so they're kind of addressing them.
Okay. All right. So, and I know we're coming up on time as well. So I think we do have a couple questions in here that may be a little bit longer of an answer potentially than the remaining 4 minutes here. So unless there's any last minute additions that are kind of 4-minute questions or so, we may just follow up with anybody that we weren't able to get to in the chat. We won't leave you in the dark though, I promise.
You're talking about resources too that we're going to send out.
Yeah. We're working on some things too to provide a little bit more clarity. We talked a lot of different ground here, but I know you guys are like, just give me the 5 things that I need to know. So we're putting stuff together there for you guys as well to use that as you go forward. But no, again, really want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us. I know everybody's busy, got schedules, got patients that you need to get back to. Appreciate you spending time with us, and thank you for caring enough to learn about everything that's going on in the HIPAA landscape and AI. And we hope to have a lot more information for you as we go forward over the next year. I'm sure there's a lot to come.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.